Hello, welcome to Fantastic Beats. 3 people, 3 tracks. We swap them, we talk about them. I'm Jack Chuter.
I'm Lizzie Maris.
And our very first guest on this podcast is none other than my brother, and a human in his own right, apparently, according to the notes that he left us, and also a musician as well. It's James Chuter. Hi, James.
Hello, hi there.
Hi, thanks for coming on the very first episode of Fantastic Beats. So this is a podcast, like I say, where we're going to be swapping music recommendations that we've all brought to the table. We've all brought 1 track each, and we've gone away and listened to them, and now we're coming back here to talk about them. We're going to keep it quite snappy, quite speedy, and I'm going to kick off with my track recommendation that I put to the other 2, and that's Low, and the song's called Always Trying to Work It Out. So this is a band from the States, and this particular track came out on their album Double Negative, which was released last year, and I've never really got into Low. They've been around for ages, but then a podcast that I listened to, which does album reviews, talked about this record, raved about this album, and so I thought I'd better check it out. And it's a really beautiful record of really weird, kind of slow, sad, murky songs that are just covered in buckets of noise and echo. And this track I've picked is probably my favourite. And it's just, I mean, as I say, it's saturated in effects. It's a beautiful melody, but it kind of clenches in and out. It's got this weird throbbing effect going all the way through it. It gets engulfed by distortion at one point. I just love the fact that it's a really gorgeous track. The vocal harmonies are lovely. And yet they're quite happy to sabotage it by just completely drenching it in all kinds of different noises and sounds that undercut the main melody. So, yeah, it's one that I really like. The lyrics as well, I think, are really cool. But Lizzie, what did you think?
Yeah, so this one, it definitely feels suspended to me. So I was thinking, when you are trying to work something out and you sort of screw up your face and you sort of take yourself out of the conversation or out of the room sort of mentally for a few seconds to kind of think about what you're trying to put across. Yeah. This song sort of feels like it might hang there.
Yes.
So it's kind of floating, and because it is a bit gloomy and a bit kind of shadowy. But I like the bit where it gets incredibly distorted and then kind of snaps itself out of it. And interestingly, that's kind of towards the end.
Yes.
So that for me felt like the bit where you might sort of come back into consciousness and go, oh, I'm in a room full of people and I need to react.
Yes.
So I like the narrative of it as well. He talks about being in the grocery store and not knowing how to react. So gloomy.
You sound sort of all right with it, but not 100% convinced.
I like thinking about where it would sit rather than it.
All right, fair. James, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting track. I've never listened to Low before, so it was my first time checking them out. I thought it was interesting. Lizzie mentioned about the coming back to consciousness, the big kind of booming sub-boom sound that kind of underpins the rhythm of the whole song. It really reminded me of kind of in a film where there's a big explosion or something, and then there's that moment of silence before the noise and the consciousness all comes back.
Right.
It's that kind of really confusing sort of moment. I really felt that that sort of sprang to my mind, and it just sounds like this huge underwater explosion. I thought it was a really cool kind of effect that I haven't really heard in anything else. All the other instruments kind of dip out momentarily in that space after the boom, if that makes sense. But
yeah, totally. That's the thing. You hear it. I think you hear it a lot in dance music. So it's a technique often used in trance and techno, isn't it? Where you get this sucking effect when there's a bass drum, and it gives the whole thing a sense of it's almost like it's breathing. But in this, it's even the lead vocal gets sucked into it, almost like a black hole. Which is a weird thing to do, because usually the vocal's this infallible thing at the front that doesn't get touched. But I think the fact that you've both picked up on the fact that there's this bewilderment about it, because there's a lyric where he says, I think, and I can't find anywhere where the lyrics are actually spelled out, but he says something like, I saw your shit downtown at the gallery, as if almost modern art is also something that discombobulates people.
Oh, see, I read it said, sorry, shit fell down, I forget her name.
Yeah.
So I thought he was talking about an old relationship.
Yeah, this is This is what I think. It's kind of a meta meaning, isn't it? Like we're trying to suss out the meaning of a song that's talking about miscomprehension, which is quite nice. But yeah.
Oh, they got us. They got us.
Bloody fools. Should we move on to our second track? And that one is James's track. James, what do you reckon? When I say what do you reckon, I mean James. What's the track?
So yeah, the track I chose was a song called Dolphin by Panda Bear. So Dolphin is the first single to be released from Panda Bear's new album coming out in February. So Panda Bear is one of the members of Animal Collective who've been going for probably about 20 years now. And I've been following Panda Bear's solo music for about 10 years. And the sound that he has developed quite a lot over that time. And it's always based on kind of a lot of samples and electronic sounds. But over that time, it still has managed to retain that very Panda Bear sound, if that makes sense. And there's always something kind of interesting or unusual going on. And this song in particular has got like a watery sample that plays a bit of a percussive role, and it sounds like a pebble being thrown or dropped into water. There's like a big emphasis on the vocal melody as well and harmony, which I love, and that's something that's common in all of Panda Bear's music really, and kind of like the Beach Boys, who I absolutely love.
Really?
Slightly. But yeah, so there's kind of, particularly the vocal melody, they're kind of floating over the edge. There's never really any jagged edges throughout the song. Just got this kind of lovely floaty melody woven over the top. I really like it. I think it's a good example of Panda Bear's sound, and it's got me warmed up for the rest of the album coming out soon. Yeah, what did you guys think?
Yeah, it starts with this kind of like cascading, like an arcade shooting sound. It goes like blah, 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 which is actually kind of out of character for the rest of the track, I think.
Yeah.
And it felt to me like I had fallen down a trapdoor into a sewer, and then that dripping sound, that's where that was coming from. And then you sort of like, at the end, you sort of find your way out and you come back into the real world and you just sort of carry on. The dripping sound is really interesting, and you kind of think no, this won't be there the whole way through, but I'm pretty sure it is, isn't it? It's the whole way through. Couldn't possibly be. Interestingly as well, it has a sort of I wanted to find a better way to describe this, but let's go for it. It's got a sort of Jack Johnson sunny acoustic guitar, like sort of driving all the way through it, which is kind of odd because it's this very sort of like slightly odd song with a bit of like a driving kind of gloom to it. I thought I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a happy song, but there is this kind of lone Jack Johnson-y acoustic guitar in it, which I really liked. I thought that was nice.
I thought it was it's a really strange track. I've had a really interesting time with it because you get the instruments coming in within the first 30 seconds, and you almost expect, especially because the melody feels so grand, like the melody itself is actually, I think, quite romantic and quite majestic. And I almost expected like an orchestra would perhaps billow into the second half. And I think the only sort of instrumental development that's kind of consistent in the song is the fact that the drum machine speeds up like about halfway through. Apart from that, it just stays in that sort of cocoon that it starts out with, which I was almost quite frustrated with that to begin with, because it almost feels like it trails off mid-sentence, like the end of the track just comes and it's like, oh, it's done. But when I think I might have mentioned to you, James, but I saw Panda Bear at Field Day Festival during the summer, and he looked really stranded on stage. Like it almost looked like he couldn't fill the space he was in. But Having heard this track as well, I feel like I understand that that's probably part of a deliberate effect where he's almost generating this vast amounts of space on either side of him that he refuses to fill.
Totally.
And it certainly draws attention, I think, to the few elements that are there. I mean, the vocal sounds like it's been auto-tuned because it is so smooth. And there's almost times where there's a vocal vibrato in it, but that vibrato sounds like it's been applied afterwards, like it's not in his voice, it's like an effect, which is weird. And I just think compared to the other material of his that I've heard, which is often quite chaotic and very noisy and quite wishy-washy, like when I say wishy-washy, I mean it sounds like it's sloshing around and like in water. Like this was a really refined, like a really simple track, but because it doesn't feel concluded, I keep coming back to it. So I've been really intrigued by this.
I really, it's really interesting. A couple of things that each of you picked up on actually is I was going to mention about how water seems to be a common theme throughout his music, and not in such an obvious way that all the lyrics about water, but I think in his sound and I guess it really evokes a sense of kind of watery themes to me when I listen to it. But also, another interesting thing I think Lizzie pointed out about the sound at the start that felt like you were cascading down into a sewer. I almost said as well that the water dropping sound reminds me a lot of, occasionally you get the odd one that sounds a bit like the jump sound from Super Mario Brothers on the old NES. And if you think about jumping, going down into a sewer and then this jumping sound going along, it's essentially a tribute to Super Mario Brothers in that way, I guess.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. And he's a dad, isn't he, as well? So I wonder if all these childhood themes are coming up because he's around his kids.
Oh,
because
possibly.
He mentioned that auto-tune became a big thing because all of his kids listen to, this modern music and it's all auto-tuned and stuff. So could be.
Yeah.
Could be. All right.
Really, really nice little unique one, that. You can say of that one you won't have heard anything like it. It's nice. Real nice.
Nice.
Awesome.
Gonna switch off the screen, unblinded, and I'll always find you. Knelt down upon the knee.
So Lizzie's track is our last recommendation of the day.
Yeah, so my track is Declare Independence by Björk. So I think in contrast to your two songs, this is not new. This is very old. This is 2007 off her Volta album. So yeah, this is an absolute punch to the face of a song. So this is distorted. It's pretty obnoxious as well. It kind of has these electric shock sounds that sort of punctuate it all the way through, which it does feel like an electric chair every time kind of one hits you if you have it on quite loud. It's very much like a relentless marching protest song. So the main line in it is she's kind of shouting, declare independence, don't let them do that to you. But it's really interesting because the word that becomes and them sort of becomes very pivotal, because I know that throughout my life, that and them has become many different things. It's become a boss at work. It's become, a political vote. It's really interesting. And she does, it's kind of stayed with her throughout her career. So she will change it for different shows and in different countries. And sometimes that gets her into trouble because she was, using it to talk about the Catalonia vote in 2017 and stuff. And she's got, so it's obviously I think originally it sort of came from Icelandic independence and Greenland and because of course where she's from, but it has kind of stayed with her throughout her career to become this shifting punky kind of protest song. And one of the standout bits is where she, in between sort of a little bridge, she hisses like justice, and I had to look up what she was saying because for a long time I didn't know.
No, I didn't know until just
but
now.
It's justice. Yeah. But it's great. And then at the end, when you think it's kind of done or it's kind of slowing, it goes into absolute overdrive. Everything becomes relentless, everything becomes distorted. And one extra tiny little thing on this one, the video is well worth a watch, because she's kind of playing this huge loom of people and protest, but actually the video is great, but watch the making of video because you will not believe what went into making that video, because you kind of think, oh, they might have done it this way, but no, they built this massive marching loom machine. I don't know what they did with it afterwards or where that went. But yeah, the video is an extra one to watch with this. But yeah, it's just one of my favourite songs. Björk's just one of my favourite people. It's one of my favourite songs, and it's a good angry fucking song.
Yeah, big time. So James, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I thought it was a really cool song. Listening to Lizzie talk about it just now has given it a new kind of level of interest. I didn't know, I didn't actually research how old the song was at all. So the fact that it's become this shifting anthem that has served many different purposes over the years is really cool. And that, obviously, I missed that when I listened to it. But I think the thing that stood out for me most was how cleverly produced it was. Because I think what's being played is very kind of chaotic and discordant, particularly when it kind of builds up, and it would easily sound like a kind of very like heavy metal song, if it was produced differently. But I think it doesn't come across that way, and obviously you can feel the aggression, and it's got energy, but it doesn't sound like a heavy metal song, which I thought it could easily do if it was kind of produced differently. And the kind of zappy sounds, like the glitchy printer dial-up connection-y sort of sounds, I thought were really interesting as well. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was interesting, but I think for me, like, I think I sway a lot more towards more emotional, I guess, music, and this had quite a robotic sound with the repetition and the type of sounds used, which I thought made it a really interesting song. But yeah, I think I didn't quite get that emotional side that I normally like to cling on to. But yeah, really enjoyed listening.
No, fair.
Interesting. I think seeing it live would probably change that, because it is incredibly emotional live, and then of course depending on where you are and where your country's at that time, it could be incredibly. That's a really interesting point. Jack, what are you saying?
Well, we saw it live, didn't we? We saw it in Paris at the Zenith, and I think she actually finished her set with it. But it's interesting actually that we talk about the context that the song is in, because as you say, it's 2007 and the album Volta that it's taken from. It comes like it's the penultimate track on the album, and the 3 tracks before it are those kind of almost what would, I guess you could consider, classic Björk songs at the moment, where they're these really ribbon-like sort of unspooling melodies. Emotionally, it's got this ambiguity to it. It's very fluid. And then you get this song, like, right as you think the album is starting to wind down, which is just this. I mean, it's the most aggressive and direct thing I think she's ever done. And it's an anthem as well. Like, there's, like I say, the songs beforehand are not anthems, but this is so universal and so simplistic, but in a way which is designed to mobilize. And it's just basically a battering ram, so raw. Like, I think the sequencing on the album really brings this out as well. Like, it's worth going through the whole record just to hear Declare Independence at that point. But I mean, I love everything you've both mentioned already, but also when the drum machine comes in, like, that's a moment, because it comes in a beat earlier than is expected, so it's almost like it's too raring to go. And obviously it's this like massive stomp, so it's like this march, this onward march. And obviously, I mean, we've spoken about the various contexts that it can be put in. I mean, she's obviously a vocal feminist as well. This very much feels like something that could be applied to the patriarchy, perhaps. And, them can be imbued with so much. But yeah, I just think it's brutal.
It's interesting what you say about it being anthemic, because actually, thinking about it, it's the only Björk song that you could probably easily sing along to.
Yeah, it is. Big time.
You're going to have a difficult time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you're going to have a difficult time following any others, aren't you?
Yeah, that's it. I think that's so... It's great that she really makes this song so plain and simple, so that anyone can co-opt it for their own purposes. It's just really cool. I should say as well, I knew in advance that this album featured the lightning bolt drummer. And I listened to this track and I was like, I bet this is a track with him on it, because it's such a lightning bolt style track. And if anyone's heard lightning bolt, you'll know what I mean. But actually he crops up elsewhere. But I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of buzzy aggression like found its way into to declare independence as well.
Interesting,
Cool, isn't it?
Little nugget of trivia there as well.
Something to
Brilliant.
keep them hanging on. The listeners love that stuff.
Don't let them do that to you. Declare independence. Don't let them do that to you. Damn colonists. Ignore their patronizing.
Thank you so much, James. It's been great to have you on for this first episode.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great.
And if people want to keep up to speed with what you're doing, I mean, you've got a band that have just put out a new release. So, yeah, tell us about that.
That's right. My band, Midnight in England, we've just released a new 2-track called Real Cinema, which you can find on Spotify or Bandcamp or iTunes, any of those ones. Midnight in England, Real Cinema. Check it out if you feel like it.
Certainly do, yeah.
And Lizzie, where can people find us, Fantastic Beats?
You can find us for all your Fantastic Beats needs at fantasticbeatspodcast.com. We are also on Twitter at fantastic_pod. Or if you want to be on the show, you want to talk to us, you can email us at hello@fantasticbeatspodcast.com. God, how many times during recording this is the very first one, are we going to say Fantastic Beasts?
All the
it's
time.
It's kind of the point, but it's already happening.
Yeah. It's a nightmare. But we'll get through it. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.